timber management is an important part of the habitat program we have here at the farm. We try to do some selective thinning every year. You can see the skidder there bringing a log in, and then here they're stripping and cleaning and cutting to size. There are three big advantages that I can think of to timber management. One, obviously it's very good for the wildlife. Opens up the forest floor and allows fresh new growth to come up. Everything from the stumps will be resprouting to weeds and forbs and briars and such coming up because they got sunlight to them. So timber management's good for the wildlife. It's good for the forest. We do selective thinning, only taking some of the lesser desirable trees and the older mature trees out of the farm. And then lastly, and it's not a bad benefit, is generate some income. One of the few sources of income we have here on the farm. So I try to do a little timber management every year. I'll thin about 100 acres. And we'll go around and I'll show you some of the timber management we've done in years past. So here he runs it. Logging has come a long ways from days gone by. You take that, run it through the stripper, the delimber. So this is the ultimate of multitasking. Cut the end of it off. Crawl up in the woods and watch the cutter do his job. I gotta admit it was a little bit intimidating getting this video because he's cutting these giant trees down in the woods. You don't know which way they're going to fall, and you know he's in this cutter with very limited visibility, so he may not know I'm even in the woods. It was a bit unnerving. Nonetheless, here you can see he's cut a hardwood log down and he's cutting it to length for the skidder to be able to haul it out. As you can see, operating the cutter is not a job for the faint-hearted. It takes a lot of talent and experience to be a first-rate operator. I think you can see this guy knows exactly what he's doing. I'm blessed to have a terrific timber crew. They've been working with me for several years, managing my timber, and they know exactly what my goals and expectations are, and do a great job in every way. Southern forests are not the easiest to operate in. They're thick, with limited visibility. There's creeks, drainages, and thickets all over the place, making the job very challenging. And we're very particular about which trees we remove. We'll go in and find the highest quality oak trees and thin around them, releasing them so that they can reach full productivity. And then we'll find the very uber old oak trees that have gotten too large, and we'll cut them down too, because they're the ones that we've learned from experience will get blown over in a windstorm. The other trees that we take out are the very large pine trees because we found that the mills will no longer take them. So here with the cutter, what he's got to be able to do is snake through the forest, pick out the trees that we want removed, and from experience he knows which ones those are. So he's got to snake through, remove the trees while trying not to damage the other trees, all while operating a giant piece of equipment nimbly through the forest. It's a tough job, but he does a great job of it, and I'm appreciative. Here I am in a stand of timber that was cut 2 summers ago. So this is the summer of 2019. In 2017 we cut this stand of timber, and you can kind of see how thick it is right here. It's basically 6 to 8 feet tall throughout a lot of this. There's pockets like this all through the timber. Obviously, where the timber's a little heavier, it's a little thinner, and where it's some more open areas, it's a little thicker. But it grows back into a giant salad bar, and there's just multiple species that are fabulous for all forms of wildlife. Here you can see devil's walking stick. It's probably too far for the camera, but there are tremendous thorns on it. But that is actually one of the preferred ice cream plants of the South. Very high quality plant, heavily grazed. In fact, I don't know if you can see it or not, I don't think there's a leaf on the whole plant. And of course, here's some greenbrier, smilax. There's multiple species of greenbrier out through here. They're all native to the South. Here you can see a little goldenrod, great for the bees, great honey. It's starting to pop up. There's an oak sprout coming up, another oak sprout right here, a different kind of smilax right here. Here's some beautyberry. Beautyberry all over the farm, very common in this area. Find a lot of nipping of the very tips of the beautyberry in the fall. Don't see much grazing on it any other time of the year, but in the fall, the next time we get a rain, they'll start nipping the tips of this. It's September, mid-September right now. So let's look around some. This looks like a persimmon right here. And the list goes on and on. There's stuff in here I don't even know what it is. There's so many different species. Point being, little timber stand improvement, 2-year-old stand. This is what you get. I try to do about 100 acres of timber management every year. That gives me a mosaic of different levels, from first cut, new growth, to 2-year-old growth. You got 1-year-old growth. We'll go take a look at some 1-year-old growth right now just to see the difference, but it explodes in a fury of wildlife, food, and cover. I'm a big fan of it. It complements the food program perfectly, the food plot program perfectly, and all works together. Let's go take a look at a 1-year cutting now. I'm in the 1-year-old cut that I was telling you about, and as you can see right away, it's much lower than the 2-year-old cut. That doesn't mean there's not just an incredible amount of diversity of food species growing in here. I mean, just right here I can see dewberry. There's going to be blackberry back up in here. Beautyberry, as we looked at over at the other place. Here's a young oak sprout. Here's a wild grape growing. Here's a devil's walking stick right here. I bet if you looked hard enough up in here you could find a rattlesnake, but I'm going to not look that hard. Point being, again, tremendous diversity. We cut this last summer, so it's been roughly 1 year since it's been cut. And again, you can see that it's lower than where we just came from, but the entire 100 acres or so that we cut all looks like this. Just absolutely gorgeous, absolutely a salad garden, and the deer are piling in here. So, as I mentioned, I try to do this every year. Now, one thing that happens with time is after 7, 8, 9 years, just depending on weather patterns, this will start to grow up and become extraordinarily thick, and then the trees will start to canopy over, and as they canopy over, it'll slowly thin out. So there's an evolution that takes place over time. What I do in the timber program is, as I may have mentioned at another time, we don't cut any white oaks. We'll go in, and if we find great white oaks, we might thin around it to release the white oaks that are here, but essentially try not to cut any white oaks. The pine trees only get cut when they're over old, or if they're too crowded, we'll thin them out to release some of the pine trees. There's a devil's walking stick right there. Failed to mention it. It's everywhere in here. Anyway, some people may say that pine trees don't have a lot of value for deer, and that's probably true, but they do have value for wildlife, and there are a lot of species that do like them. So the over-old pine trees we need to take out, because at some point in time they get too big for the mills, and the mills won't take them. At that time also they start to become lightning rods or wind magnets and get blown over, struck by lightning, and die. So we'll manage to the white oaks. We'll manage to the red oaks. If we got a little grove of red oaks, we'll release the best two. Once some of the red oaks get over old, we'll go in and take them out too, because anytime you get a big windstorm, once again, the red oaks will be grown over. And I've had lots and lots of timber loss from high winds, which is one of the reasons we've evolved the timber program the way it is. The other thing of the light thinning, the other advantage of the light thinnings that we do through the forest like this is that it speeds up the rotation. And while this forest may become very thick and start to canopy again in 12, 15 years, by that time we're already back cycling through it again and keep the cycle going, so that every year we're cutting some timber. Every year there's different age classes of weeds and forbs growing in here, and it's just a piece of the puzzle. One more piece to make the overall way better. Timber management, one of the core values of a good management program in the South.